Well, hello and welcome to The Goddess XxX, also known as Samhain Ayurvedic Holy, and we are going to talk about what it is to be an occult mistress, what an occult mistress is, what an occult mistress does, and how an occult mistress is different from a domina or a dominatrix or a mistress. So as those of you who know, I am the legendary Goddess XxX, Samhain Ayurvedic Holy, and I am an ordained high priestess. As an ordained high priestess, very different than a dominatrix, which is the reason that you start developing the title or the name or the phrase occult mistress. A mistress of the occult is a high priestess. So I'm going to say that one more time. A mistress of the occult is a high priestess. A high priestess is a woman who is devoted to the esoteric arts, the ancient mysteries, the occult arts. And she has cultivated a practice as a spiritual practitioner. She may be someone who does divination or does sacred teachings, or she may be a root worker, depending on who she is as a teacher. And the reason she is a high priestess is because she has moved up the ladder or moved up the staircase to being able to teach others the arts. That is the whole point of being a high priest or a high priestess, is to teach the arts. And a high priest and a high priestess can have a variety of arts. Now, there's some discernment here, because not all high priestesses go into the paths of root worker in voodoo or voodoo. Not all high priestesses go into the paths of sorcery, which is the power of the Enochian and Goetia. They do not usually go into those places. Some do, some don't. So the discernment here is that as a spiritual practitioner, I have many paths that I have practiced. I have many paths that I have studied because I've been studying since a child. I started from shamanism and moved through all the ancient mysteries because that is a part of my work as a high priestess and as a practitioner, as a Samhain, as a supreme. It's because I have been elected and chosen to teach all of these different paths, but I've had to learn them all as well. And so the difference here is I am a spiritual practitioner, a high priestess, who is also connected to the BDSM world. So this is where the kink comes in. This is where the mistress part comes in. A lot of you will go to a dominatrix or will spend time with a domina. And how do you meet the dominatrix or the domina? Usually you meet her at a dungeon and you pay for your session with her and you play master and slave or mistress and slave and you have a great time and then you leave. That is not what an occult mistress or a high priestess does. It's a relationship. It's a relationship in a lifestyle. And normally you are connected to some form of masonry or some form of order or a clandestine order where you are naturally practicing the occult yourself. So you yourself are an occult practitioner or a conjurer or a sorcerer or a sage or a mage. And you are developing your own spiritual practice. And then therefore you are seeking what we call a consort, a female consort. This is not somebody that you pay to spend a couple hours with and then you play for a while and then it's over. Do you see the discernment here? Do you see the difference here? Very, very different. And I have lots of friends who are dominatrixes. I have daughters who are dominatrixes. This is not going against dominatrixes. I mean, we play in the same clubs together. A lot of us play at the same arenas and in the same dungeons and hang out together and spend time together. But that is the difference. A lot of dominatrixes, become my daughters and go through the initiation processes with me because they want to infuse and they truly want to become high priestesses. But they learned from a different direction. They learned through the dungeon versus learning through the temple. So there's a difference here. I grew up in the temples and then went into the dungeons. So I want to talk a little bit about my background in the BDSM world. These are incredible stories and they're all 100% real and true. These are really how my life, developed itself. And I started in the BDSM world at literally the age of 17. And this is how it all happened. I was working at a store called the Temple of Good Things. And the Temple of Good Things was a store that opened in 1969 by Louis Nusenow in the LAX Triangle, or what we call the Triangle of Westchester, California, near the LAX airport. And I walked in there one day because I needed a greeting card. And I just got my driver's license, so it was a big deal, and I needed to get a greeting card for an event. And I said, oh yeah, there's that cool little shop in the Triangle, I'll go there. I went into the Triangle and I walked into this store and I had no idea that I had just walked into the OTA, the OGD, and the OTO, and the practice of Yogi Bhajan. And those of you who know Louis Nusenow, what an amazing Mason. What an amazing brother. What an amazing teacher. And I got the chance to apprentice him and spend time with him for several years. And he hired me as a reader and as a sales manager. And I worked out of that store for, my goodness, probably 20 years. And what happened was that Louis had this charisma about him. And he would always say, welcome, I'm magnificent. How are you today? And if you say, how are you today? He'd go, oh, well, I'm magnificent. And, he had his wizard's beard and his long hair and his hippie, attitude. But he was so much more than a hippie. And he made candles and incense and sold, beautiful little gifts that were very spiritual in nature. And that was the Temple of Good Things. And we all gathered there and we had a coffee hour. And, around between 4:30 and 5 o'clock, we would all start to gather and we'd have coffee together and spend time together. And he loved music and jazz and history and the arts and the ancient mysteries. And people from all over the world, celebrities alike, would show up. And we would all hang out together. And that's how I grew up. I grew up around mystics and masons and spiritual practitioners, sound engineers, these amazing people of Hollywood who all had the common thread. We all had the common thread of the Temple of Good Things and the ancient mysteries and the orders. And those of you who know Oberon, many of you know Oberon from Brethren of the Coast and from the OTO. I grew up with Oberon. Oberon and I used to spend hours and hours and hours talking about life at the Temple of Good Things. And that's only an example of the people that I grew up with. And so this was a way of living for me. I don't know anything different because this is literally how I grew up. And I had my throne there and I'd sit in my throne and hang out with everybody. And Louis would teach me magic and mystery, and I grew up on the seals of Solomon and the Black Pullet. I grew up in the 777 Crowley book. I grew up in the Thoth tarot deck. This was just a way of living for me. And my clients were celebrities. My clients were fellow practitioners. And my brothers surrounded me and raised me and lifted me and taught me everything that they know. And that is how I became the Samhain and the Supreme. And teachers from all over the world would connect, and I would learn from all of these different teachers. And one of my teachers was Tim Howard. And who is Tim Howard? Tim Howard, an amazing person. Rest in power, Tim Howard. Tim Howard was known as Tim the Toolman Taylor. He was famous for his leather top hat, and he was a leathersmith and toy maker. He made his own floggers, his own whips, and he made these beautiful horsehair whips. And he was known for that. He was famous in the community. He was also a monarch. And those of you who know Laird de Sade, maybe you do not, or La de Sade, there's a billion ways that you could say that, but he was a monarch in that society, which is a Masonic society. And we would gather and go to Nob Hill and go to all these play parties, and he brought me under his wing and he taught me the lifestyle. And we would go to Magic's Mansion, for those of you who know Magic's Mansion, and we went to all these different play parties, and that was our lifestyle. Friday would come along and I would do my readings and healings, and he'd be back in the shop, making his whips and selling his whips, and people from the lifestyle would come in, and Friday night we would go to a play party. And then Saturday, all kinds of people from the club would come in, and we'd get together and we'd go to another play party, usually at Nob Hill, or we would meet at social hours at the sportsman's lodge. And this was, back in the 90s when, you could still get called on by the cops, and the cops would come up and raid the party, and, it was ridiculousness. It truly was. But this is our lifestyle. And, on Sundays we would all get together at each other's houses and go to barbecues and go to weddings and funerals, and we lived a lifestyle. This was who we are. This was not a profession. And believe me, I had many chances, especially at Nob Hill, to become a professional. And that was a decision that we all made. It was a decision that we made and that I made with my mentors and my teachers. And we made the decision that I didn't want to be a dominatrix. I wanted to be in the lifestyle. I wanted to be a high priestess. I wasn't interested in being a dame for hire or a domina for hire. It didn't excite me. And I would see, the fellow brothers who would, bring in the girl that they hired, and my mentor would say, okay, that's a girl for hire. And he'd be like, do you want to be a girl for hire, or do you want to be in the lifestyle? And I said, I want to be in the lifestyle. And he introduced me to these dominas for hire, and I spent time with these women. I got to know these women. I became friends with these women, and it was clear to me that I wasn't interested in men hiring me to take me to the club and play with me for money. I was very clear that I did not want that. I wanted something so much more valuable than that. And no offense to them. No offense to them at all. I wanted something more. I wanted something richer and more powerful. And I wanted real. I wanted a real slave, not a fake one. I wanted a real master, not someone who paid me money to be their slave for the night. That is the discernment here of someone who has grown up in the lifestyle and lived the lifestyle since 17 versus somebody who got into it because of money or because they enjoyed it and they decided to make a profession about it. So many occult high priestesses are the same. They started as practitioners and then grew into developing their lifestyle because they enjoy teaching and they enjoy being dominant in their lifestyle. These are some of the things that we talk about when, a lot of our fellow masters or a lot of our fellow teachers, you notice that they all have a BDSM background. And a lot of them have left the BDSM lifestyle and created different lifestyles for themselves. But they originally grew up in those lifestyles where they were submissive men or submissives to dominant women who were all practicing the occult. The occult is usually a female-led practice. A female-led practice where the women are in charge. And the men are a part of the hive. You see the queen bee. The queen bee is in charge. And then there's the men of the hive, or the soldiers, or the drones. This happens in many, many lifestyles where the women truly are in charge. And I'm not going to get into all of that because I can't tell you. It's hush-hush. But what I can say to you is that I'm creating this discernment and this distinction for you to truly understand who I am as an occult mistress and the difference, so that you're aware of who you're talking to. When you're getting hypnotized by me, you're aware of who's hypnotizing you. If you actually have the chance of developing a relationship with me, or attending one of our lectures at the lodges, or spending time with us at one of our events, notice they're all Masonic. Notice that they are all surrounded by Masonry. There's a reason for that. My whole entire life, I have been surrounded by Masons. There's a reason for that. That's how you know that there's a distinction there. That's the distinction. And that's how you know that I'm real. So when you meet these other women who call themselves priestesses or high priestesses or dominatrixes, start asking the right questions so that you don't get fooled by somebody that is just for hire, who's pretending to live this lifestyle. The true occultist, the true high priestess, the true Samhain or supreme is going to have a Masonic background. And some people will totally disagree with that, and that's okay. It's totally okay to disagree with that. But it's a part of it. Whether you are in the Americas or you are in Europe, there is that common thread, and the common thread is truly Masonry. Thank you so much for listening and watching this video. I am Samhain Crowley, and you are here on my Niteflirt channel on YouTube, or maybe you're hanging out with me at the 777 Mystery School. Click the links below to learn more about me. Please remember to like and subscribe, and catch up with me in one of my documents. If you're more interested in a session, you can reach me at niteflirt.com at The Goddess XxX. And if you're interested in hiring me for a radio show or a TV program or something like that, or a lecturer, let me know. I'll be more than happy to show up and share my knowledge with you. Lots of love, lots of light. Remain in your power, remain in the light. And until we meet.